that's what I'm going to help you do. And that's my goal, to be able to get you. So you have this plan. You'll in literally 30 minutes, you're going to have exactly what to do. I don't know if you're able to write anything down, if you have a notepad or anything, but you definitely, or if you can just do it on your phone and type it into your notes, whatever you need to do, you're going to want to write some stuff down.
Yeah, I'll get one right now.
Okay. So I'll give you a couple seconds, because I'm going to give you a lot of good information. And this is exactly what I do for my own kids, not just the NUC. The NUC is a little bit different because it's a larger scale, a lot more people. But it's exactly what I do for my own players that play for me. And no matter what level, they fall into, it helps get them in the right spot and it gets them to the right school. If they were a Division I kid, it gets them to Division I. If they were a Division III kid, it gets them to the right school in Division III. So, but it's important that you follow these actions, because if you do it, then you'll put yourself in the best position. Plus, you have a coach that's a very well-known coach, excellent coach, but he's probably a little bit more old school on things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of a who shows up. Now, his word goes a long way because he's obviously coaching the NFL. I mean, a lot of people know he is. But he's going to have a little bit more of the guys come to me approach, and then, he'll refer you. And I know because Coach Hill teaches in Indian Hills, I know that they think a lot about you, and, they think you're, a heck of a player. So I know that point is really good. So those guys are going to say good things about you. And, I got that straight from Coach Hill, who obviously teaches in Indian Hills. So those are really good.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Coach Hill is a phys ed teacher at Indian Hills.
I believe I played football and baseball against Coach Hill back in our younger years.
Oh, did you really? And now he went.
Yeah.
He went to Did he go to PV or?
No. His wife actually is
his wife.
I hate to say it, but his wife is the stud athlete in the family.
He told me that. Actually.
Yeah. Three-time All-American in softball. She's phenomenal.
Yeah, he did tell me that. That's funny. So Coach Hill, he says great things about you. I tease him. I was like, we got to steal Brian over by us, make you guys real pissed over there at PV. But I told him, what kind of athlete I thought he was, just seeing him in 7-on-7 and all those kind of things. And obviously they're pretty excited about you. So, and unfortunately we play you guys at some point. So we'll be a lot better than we were last year, where you guys just smashed.
Next week we have a 7-on-7 against you guys. I'm pretty sure.
What happened?
I think we have a 7-on-7 against you guys.
What 7-on-7 you guys going to?
It's at PV, right, Belleville? Yeah, we're supposed to have a 7-on-7 against Belleville next week at PV. I think Wednesday.
Oh no, we're going to Montville.
Maybe Montville. I don't know. That's what coach said.
Oh yeah, no. Maybe a different hills. It might be a different hills. So here's what I want. So I want to cover those things. So a couple of things. First of all, what's your official height? 6'2"?
6'3".
6'3". Okay. And what are you weighing right now?
I'm like 180, 185.
Did you get timed at Rutgers camp?
Yeah, I got a 4.9 for the 40.
4.9. Okay, so that's one area that you're going to obviously have to improve, right?
Yep.
And that's something that you could obviously work on when you get to the off season this year, because that one of the things that's important is obviously speed, size, athleticism are they do dictate levels, so that's an important thing. And the kind of athlete you are, if you can get yourself into 4.7 range and or maybe even under that, by next year you'll be in business. So if you can go under 4.7 at your size, you probably end up being around 200 pounds by next year. You're really going to be in business. I do think receiver at the college level is going to be a fantastic position, and for you, you're going to be 200 plus pounds. When you get to college, you're probably going to be 210, 215 by the time you're a sophomore or junior. And as a receiver, that's a pretty formidable guy to cover. That's why the speed aspect's pretty important for you to continue to improve. So here's a couple things that you need to do. and I think I told your father this, I think if you can continue to improve your speed, I think you're a minimum FCS level receiver. Okay. And then maximum, you could be an FBS guy if you can really get that speed down. And I think that'll indicate a lot of things. I wouldn't worry about the fact that you're playing quarterback, because you'll be able to go to camps at whatever position you are. I think if you stay at a quarterback, there's a million quarterbacks and there's very few positions. So it's very difficult to get a scholarship to begin with that quarterback. And so you could be a fantastic quarterback and not get a scholarship offer, but receiver, everybody's carrying a bunch of those guys. So that's kind of one of my rationales about it. And plus, you're such a good big athlete that if it didn't work out at receiver, you could end up being a safety. You might end up being like an outside linebacker. There's a lot of places for you to go. Okay, that's kind of my thought process with it. So here's what you need to do. You need to go and take out a spreadsheet. Okay, and get and write down 100 schools. Okay, 100 schools. So on those 100 schools, you got to write down 25 BCS schools.
BCS?
Division I schools.
Yeah.
25 BCS schools, FBS schools, 25 FCS schools. Okay. What kind of student are you?
3-4.
3-4. Okay. Are you interested in Ivy League?
Yeah.
He doesn't know too much about it.
Okay. So if you are 3-4, that's going to be
Princeton.
Yep, that's going to be an option for you. There's no doubt about it that's going to be an option for you. So and that's something you should definitely investigate. So I'd write down – at first, I'd write down all the Ivy League schools.
Okay.
Are you there, Coach?
Yeah, I'm here. Give me 2 seconds. I just got to take care of one thing. Give me 2 seconds.
Go ahead. That's your biggest thing right now, speed. 3 people have told you that already. 3 people that know what they're talking about. The only thing holding you back right now. Right. Coach, yes, sir. Don't say, yeah. You sound like a dummy. And you? Yes. Yes, yes, Coach. Yes, sir.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So
Okay.
you're gonna have 25 FBS schools, 25 FCS schools. Take 10, whatever the Ivy Leagues. You should write those down. Okay, and then just from a safe school standpoint, pick 10 schools at a level below that you also like. Okay. All right. So that'll give you to start with 70 schools. Okay. You're going to work through. So you need to go on that spreadsheet. You need to put down these important positions. So the recruiting coordinator, his phone number, email, okay, for those schools. The positional coach, phone number and email, whatever you can gather, and I'm going to tell you how to do it, okay? And then either the OC or the head coach. The head coach a lot of times may not be the first stop for you, but you may have to go to the OC and then go from there. So you're gonna put all those guys down on a spreadsheet, all those schools, all those names. All right. You have to develop a profile. This is really important. That just I know you have some film from last year. If you taped any of the stuff you did at 7-on-7, you could slap some of that stuff in there. But you have a highlight tape that also then you take that highlight tape, and then you take your profile height, weight, size, speed from that standpoint. Since you've only been timed once at 4.9, you want to make sure that you put 4.7 or something like that down as your time frame, because the only people that would have that information is Rutgers. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, Coach.
Okay, so then after you do that, okay, you're going to email that profile to every single one of those coaches. You're also going to go and then from a standpoint, you're going to go and call every single one of those coaches. And if you don't get the coach live, you're going to leave a message.
Yes, Coach.
So then after you do that, okay, after you do that, you go into you're going to send that out. You're going to then also call every single one of them. So listen, if you don't get through, you must leave a voicemail. On that voicemail, he must leave all that pertinent information down for you. Okay, that's really. Does that make sense?
Yes, Coach.
Okay. Now, okay. A question about that?
No.
So you're going to go and you're going to work through and you're going to call and you're going to email those 70 schools the very first week. It's going to take you could do it 15 calls a day, whatever you need to do. You're going to go and do that. You can send the emails out all at once. You could do all that from that standpoint. Once you actually go and do that, okay, then your follow-up is the most important thing, okay? Because more than likely, because he's only going to be a junior, you're going to have to be the one reaching out and trying to get a hold of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because they can't reach out. Now, when you go to a camp, that's different, but they can't reach out to you. So what you have to do is, once you talk to them, the important questions you have to ask is, if they got a chance to look at your film, if they haven't got a chance to look at your film, you want to keep reaching out and following up with them. You're going to do that over the first probably 60 days from a recruiting standpoint with just those 70 schools. All right? Eventually, you're going to pick a day. Maybe it's Wednesday night. Wednesday night is usually the best night once you get into the season because that's a recruiting night for the coaches that you're most likely to reach them live at that standpoint. Okay, so you're going to use Wednesday night, if you use that as your one day, especially in season, to reach out to them. And then you're going to be in a situation where you will get from those 70 schools a possible interest level or not. Once you get that possible interest level, okay, the next thing you're going to do is for the fall is you're going to try and get yourself invited to games in the fall so you can meet these guys live. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that's your main focus in the fall is to get that information, to get them interested, because a lot of them won't know who you are. Okay, your size, your height, and your athleticism is a big thing. And when they meet you in person, that's going to be a big thing in jumpstarting your process. You're going to want to go to at least 5 games this football season. And if you could possibly make 10, make 10.
Okay.
Okay. So what that's going to start to do is that's going to start to build a buzz. With those 70 schools, you're also going to reach out on DM, okay, via Twitter to the positional coach and recruiting coordinator, and you're going to send them your info, but don't just like send them your huddle link and don't say anything. You've got to put in your name, your height, your weight, the school that you go to. All of that kind of information is key to making sure that they're going to take a look. When they see that you're 6'3", 190, like, you know, you weigh 190 right now, you can tell them you weigh 200. They're not going to meet you for a couple of months anyway. Okay? So that's important. So 6'3", 200 receiver, guys are going to be interested in that person. Okay? Just from a physical standpoint. So once you do that, you're going to do that via phone. You can do it via email. You're going to take the time to do that via Twitter, just on those 70 schools. If you don't see any progress or reaction, which I think you will get reaction from quite a few schools, but let's say you don't, you're then going to have to add a new 25 schools, FBS and FCS. Okay? You won't really have to IB or your safe, they call them safe schools, but FBS and FCS. And you're going to work that same process again, Twitter, phone, and email, until you get a reaction and start getting invited to the actual games. Those games are important because what you're going to do is you're going to get to meet the staff. You're also going to get a kind of a vibe as to how they feel about you. Now, at that point, you'll also obviously be putting down some film from games. And once you start to put film down from games, you want to update the coaches with that film. So don't wait to the end of the season. You're going to do your updating from a football standpoint. From a football standpoint, you're going to do your updating for your highlight film every 3 games.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense? And this is why I wanted you, obviously, to write some of these things down, because it's a lot of information. All right, so every 3 games. So you'll have, after your first 3 games, you'll have basically like a mid-year highlight. You'll have the 3/4 year, and then a final highlight. Troy, relax, okay? Okay, I'll give you paper. Okay, so then you're gonna have that final highlight. When you're updating them, as you're updating on your spreadsheet, you're gonna make 2 columns. Okay, column 1, after their information, their phone and email, all of that. Column 1 is gonna have whether they have responded to you or not, and then column 2 is your gauge of level of interest. And you got to kind of be honest with yourself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, everybody wants to be wishful, but you want to be honest. If they showed like mild interest, you put mild. If you got like heavier strong interest, you put heavier strong. And if you have light or no interest, you put light or no interest. Okay, from them. And then you start to really kind of, you can do, with Excel, you can build a sort and you really kind of see which schools they are. The ones that are most interested, you want to go and visit, okay, in those seasons. So when you take your 5 to 10 games, okay, you're going to go, and those 5 to 10 games, you're going to go with schools are heaviest interest in you. What I don't want you to do in the fall is go to a school that brings, that you can get on campus, but you don't feel is really interested in you. Okay, because I want to try to make the best use of your time. Does that make sense?
Yes, Coach.
All right, Dad. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay,
Completely.
good. Okay, good. So, and there's a lot of information. So obviously, we could follow up and go further. You can shoot me an email if you have any questions on this stuff. But so once you get out of that, you're going to start to get a good feel of who those schools are. The key is marking down the interest and replacing schools that have no interest in you with with new schools. So you constantly have a new replenishment. Okay, you may get through all 120 FBS schools and realize right now there's nobody interested in you. Okay, the spring will be when we restart that process again. All right, but now what will happen is, you'll have gone through the whole fall. You'll have a slew of schools that are interested in you. You're going to work those schools to try and get on campus, which will build the buzz. Okay. And so what these guys always ask is who's recruiting you? They always ask these questions when you come in. Is anybody looking at you? By you going and seeing anywhere between, and obviously your football schedule dictates some of this stuff, but between 5 and 10 schools in the fall, okay, you'll be able to, by the 3rd or 4th meeting, say, hey, yeah, I've been to Rutgers, and I've been to Boston College, I've been to University of Connecticut, or I've been to Princeton. Whatever it is, that's important, okay, because that's kind of part of the process. It sounds crazy, but that's how it is, all right? And you know, why do you see some kids get 1 million offers and some kids that don't get the 1 million offers? Once that buzz gets going, it kind of just starts to take off. It becomes a life of its own. The hardest thing to get is the very first offer. That is the hardest thing to get.
Okay.
So now you get out of you get towards the end of the fall, you have your slew of schools. More than likely, none of them will have offered you because they don't know maybe enough about you yet, but they've seen your film. Now, if your film is great, that's going to, you know, you put together an unbelievable season. That's why it's important to be the very best you can be. You put together an unbelievable season. That's certainly going to help your cause, especially at your height and size. All right. There may still be questions about your speed. You do play in a, you know, you're playing a Group 4 conference. You know, you're playing some of the biggest schools. I mean, that's one of the nice things in being in the league that we're in. Outside of the parochials, you know, we're playing some really good competition. So from that standpoint, you'll have very few questions about that. You know, you're in a big school conference. You know, you guys play Wayne Hills, right? And
Yeah.
Wayne Valley. You know, and then obviously you play us. You know, you're playing all those schools. They're big schools. You're playing against good competition. So hopefully, you know, when you're playing against those, especially the schools in our conference, you want to really dominate, you know, as best you can in those games, because having good film against those games is really going to be important. Okay. And that's key. So now you get to the spring. So what happens is, from a recruiting standpoint, in November, the college coaches are going to come in. They're finalizing the guys they want that are seniors right there. Now the kids like you who are juniors going to be seniors, they want to know who's a guy that they could possibly offer right away. So that's why you want to have all this stacked up, because that way coaches are going to they'll be more likely to come in. And you want to ask those guys if they can come in and see your coach, blah, blah, blah. Give them your phone, give the coach's phone number to them, whether it's at the school or his cell, whatever he's cool with, and encourage them to call him, especially if you're rolling in season. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because they can offer via your coach, okay? But it's going to be very different. They can't offer directly via you. They'll offer via your coach. Does that make sense? Okay, now you get into the spring. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do there, but that's an important thing. So if you can kind of build that bridge, like I said, you happen to have a coach that's, you know, coached in the NFL. His name with some of these guys is gonna hold some real weight. And if they can have a conversation with him and he's echoing some of the stuff that you're saying, then it starts to match up. It'll put you in a good position. Doesn't mean you're going to get an offer in that November time period, but you're going to be set up for when the big offer period comes, which is really the spring. Okay. You get into the spring. April 15th to May 30th is the evaluation time period for college coaches, where they can actually see you at like a camp. They can see you if you like, you know, what sport do you play in the spring? Do you play anything or no?
I might run track.
That's a good idea. I would actually recommend it. So you go run track. They can actually come to your track meet, you know what I mean, and see what kind of speed you have between that April 15th and May 30th time period. The other thing that they can do, so they're allowed 2 evaluations. One is supposed to be academic. So they'll come in, get your transcript, and usually when they do that, and I always do this for my players, we set up workouts in either in the morning or in the after school, or if you have track, you could do it after track practice, or they might just come and see you run and practice, and then you run a few routes for them or something like that. And what we would do is we would set up workouts with the coaches. So you're quote unquote, it's an evaluation period that they're coming in for academic, but they'll go and work you out. And they'll try and use it so it's part of their academic evaluation. As long as they go and grab the transcripts and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of chances that they'll go and work you out. Okay?
Okay.
Now the next thing is that workout period, guys get offers in that. My quarterback who's at Villanova, actually he's playing wide receiver now at Villanova. But he got his offers at quarterback from multitude of schools from those setup workouts. Okay, so you want to kind of encourage them, come down and say, hey, listen, I'll be at the field working out at 4 o'clock. Someone's going to be throwing to me. I'm going to run routes. If you guys want to come down and watch, please welcome to come down and watch me. That's an important part. Okay, and they have 2 evaluations. So the other thing you may do is you may send them your track and field schedule, right? Let's say you're doing well in track and whatever event you're doing, and you invite them to come down and watch that as well. Okay, so that'll give them a second evaluation. That's how guys really get offers. Okay, they'll see you in person, they'll see you work out, and every parochial school does it. Like I've always done it with my kids. A lot of public schools miss out because they don't realize that guys do that. Okay, it's just something that from being in this industry for a long time with NUC Sports, I know these things because I talk to so many guys. So that's an important thing to be able to do that. You're also going to follow that same process first with the schools that have been most interested in you, and then you're going to fill in more schools. If you had a school that was not interested in you that you love, pick 5 to 10 schools that you really is on your wish list, but maybe they haven't shown interest. You could add them back at that time period in the spring. And what do I mean by that? I mean, right after, as they're getting into the final signing day portion, which is the first week in February, when you're in January, you want to start that process because guys are starting that process in January. All right, so November they come in again. They might offer some guys. They'll come back around in January. And you want to start that process with all those schools all over phone, email, Twitter, DM, and start to build those relationships and find out who's interested again. Okay, now, when you're doing it, you have those evaluations. The other thing you want to do is you want to get on campus from a junior day standpoint because that'll also help you see which schools really like you. Okay, and, there's only so many weekends, there's only so many weekends in the spring. So if you can get to 5, that would be great. So that's why you want to kind of be choosy which ones you go to. All right. And that's why I wanted your dad on the phone because that way, if I'm just using an example, let's say you're in love with Penn State and Penn State has shown no interest, but they send you a junior day invite because they have 110 kids there for one of their spring practices. And you go down there and just like at Rutgers, you were one of a million people. Nobody knows, they might know who you are, but you're like 5th or 6th down on the depth chart of who they might be interested in. Okay. So that's an important thing that you have to be able to kind of self-evolve. And that spreadsheet, just that one simple spreadsheet is going to help you kind of move things around. All right. And I gave you those 2 simple fields, not to make it real complicated, but you might add a 3rd field as you start to go through the process. Okay. Now, the other thing that you're going to do as you're going through kind of that evaluation process is as schools start to become interested in you, they're going to invite you to – now, let's say you haven't gotten it. If you start to get offers, obviously you're in business. You could start to kind of leverage it a little bit. And we get to that point, we could talk a lot further about when you want to commit, but we're kind of not at that point yet. So let's say you start to get offers. You're kind of in business. You're in good situation. Let's say you haven't gotten any offers and you start to get invites to the different camps. That's where you want to be able to do the assessment and find the best situation for what summer camps you go to. So, I recommend you go to a couple of combines in the spring so you get some 40s down. If you want to play 7-on-7 again, that's fine. Those are good things. Sometimes coaches come to some of those as an evaluation period, like the one we went out to PA. They always have college coaches at it. But what's most important is that you get this process of making sure you find out where you stand. So let's say it is wide receiver where you're starting to get heavily recruited. Okay. But it could be safety or what you play safety, right? Or you play safety. Yeah. Okay. So it could be safety, whatever position you start to feel really becomes heavily. You never know. But let's say wide receiver becomes, a hot thing for you and then you go but you haven't yet got an offer, right? But some guys have looked at you, you kind of get a vibe that schools are interested in you. Now you want to ask them when you get on the phone in the spring and they're inviting you to camps and go, Coach, where do I stand, okay, in your rating? So everybody has kind of slightly different rating systems, but to make it simple, am I in the first slot? If you're the first slot, you'd probably already be offered. Am I 2 or 3, which means you're pretty close. But if you're 4 or 5, high likelihood that unless you run a great 40 or you just blow out their camp, it's going to be hard to get an offer there, right? And obviously, if you're beyond 5, it's definitely going to be possibly a stretch. All right. So those are things you want to know. You want to know where your priority is. And, you could always text me or ask me, if it's something that's like, you're confused about. But that's what you want to be able to do. So when you go to your camps, if you haven't gotten an offer, you go to the right ones because, again, the enemy is time. You can only go to so many camps, right? I'm not even talking about money because some of those are like only $40. I'm talking about you can only so many weekends. You're going to be, you're going to be with PV going to practice. You might have a 7-on-7 tournament with PV. You might have other things going on. A lot of times the maximum you'll be able to get to is 5. So you want to choose those 5 wisely. Would you say that the Rutgers camp that you chose to go to, was that a wise use of your time or a bad use of your time?
Wise.
You think it was wise? And now why do you think it was wise? Did any coaches talk to you?
Yeah, one of the wide receiver coaches talked to me.
Good. So that would be called a wise use of your time. Okay, so someone came and talked. Now, what did he say to you when he talked to you?
He just asked what school I went to, and he said he liked my work, and he just said to come back again next week.
Did you go back the next week?
Yeah.
You went back to the camp again the next week, and what happened?
I did well again.
Okay.
He just liked me, but he said to see him after, and then he told me to follow him on Twitter the second time I was there.
Okay, perfect. So that's a guy you're going to want to follow right away. So in theory, you probably should have did that with 3 or 4 schools this summer. You know what I'm saying? But now for next summer, right? So
that's good.
So you want to go and do that. And now you have a relationship there with one coach, right? So you would say that they have at least mild interest, right? They pulled you aside. There's definitely some interest there, okay? And you want to maintain contact. Now the next thing is to get yourself on campus there. And then you want to start to do that with the University of Connecticut, Maryland, if you can, Penn State, okay? FCS schools like William and Mary, Delaware, Maine, some of the Ivy League schools, Princeton, and they're easy to cover because they're all in the Northeast. Okay, Boston College, and you can create a buzz, and then you could start to create a buzz by building the relationships, and then you're in a great position. Okay, so now next summer comes along. If you haven't been offered by Rutgers, right, and you now have built a relationship with that wide receiver coach, your question is going to be, if he hasn't offered you, where do you stand in respect to possibly getting an offer, right? And if he says to you, you're a few away from it, then you know that as much time as you invested in Rutgers and they do like you, you really know that you're going to be a preferred walk-on there and they're not going to offer you. So you need to move on to another school. And you'll circle back with Rutgers once you end up starting to get some offers, because sometimes that's how it works. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, now a couple of schools now that are FBS, okay, that are worthwhile targeting, okay, because they'll do early offers because they kind of have a philosophy of trying to get the offers done earlier if they can, would be like Coastal Carolina. All right, and they come and they recruit Jersey hard. Villanova, which is FCS, okay, because they'll recruit hard in the spring and offer guys early. All right, those are two schools right away that will do that. All right. So sometimes you can get an offer from like an FCS school and then backdoor your way into an FBS. So you pick up a couple FCSs, then you end up going to an FBS camp. They like you, and then you end up picking up an offer there. But the recruiting coordinator, the positional coach, which you've already established a relationship with at Rutgers, okay, now you want to follow up with the recruiting coordinator because he's going to kind of do the due diligence. You build that relationship. You start to get in there with the offensive coordinator, okay, and you build that relationship. Now, the offensive coordinator at Rutgers actually coached at UConn when I was there, John McNulty. He was actually our wide receivers coach when I played at UConn. He's going back.
Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, he's I've known him for a long time, and the NFL agency I owned, I almost put a tight end with him when he was over with the Chargers. I've had a relationship with him for 20 years. So I mean that's a good thing. It doesn't necessarily get you an offer, but if they're close, you could certainly use my name. He'll know me real. Obviously, Nunzio Campanelli knows me real well as well. So there's quite a few people there. The University of Albany, you should reach out to right away. I don't know if you know who E.J. Barthel is, but he's the running backs coach, and he recruits New Jersey. He ran NUC events for a long time. I think 5 or 6 years he ran it for me in the East Coast. He's the running backs coach at Albany, and he was, before he went over to Albany, he was the recruiting coordinator at Penn State. So he has relationships over at Penn State and at Albany. Okay,
Nice.
So there's kind of, quite a circle there. Randy Etzel at the University of Connecticut, I know real well. I have to look at who the staff is over there. The University of Minnesota, there, I want to say it's the head coach is a former Rutgers guy. He was assistant coach there. And the running backs coach is actually his wife, played basketball at UConn when I was there. Slips my mind his name. He's a giant. Norris Wilson, and he's the running backs coach at, or maybe he's tight ends now, but he's at the University of Minnesota. He would know who I am, and you can use my name as well. A lot of these places, Towson State, the Ambrose brothers, they were coaches at Connecticut before they went over to Towson State, which Towson State's an FCS school scholarship. The Princeton head coach, Surace, I know well. I definitely would reach out to Princeton. I think that you would be a gem recruit for them. So, obviously it's a fantastic education. You would not get in there if it wasn't for football, but with a 3.4 GPA, and if you have good SAT score, if you're like 1100 or higher, you'll have a good chance if they deem you as a top level recruit, which they may. Okay. So, I would put that list together. Really attack it. Don't be shy about it. Have your dad help you if you need help putting the list together and doing some research. You literally can. I'm sure you've been on these. Have you been on the website to fill out recruiting questionnaires yet?
No, I haven't.
You got to do that. So when you go to the site and you fill out the recruiting questionnaire, okay, this is how the process works. It goes into the recruiting assistant, and then eventually the recruiting coordinator gets it. You get into their database.
Which website, Coach?
Yeah. What's that?
Which website does he go on for that?
All the schools that he's interested in. So each school has their own football website. They all have their own questionnaire, and they'll all have their staff directories up on the football site for the school. Every single one of them. So it literally, you'll find it right away. Okay. Now, here's a little trick. If you don't, let's say the coach doesn't have his email on there for some reason. Now, most of them do, but let's say they don't for some reason. You could actually go to the school directory, their faculty, and type in the coach's name, and every single one of, including Nick Saban, I found. So. That's a little trick. Most people just stay on the football site, but if they can't find it, they kind of just give up. If you go into the school directory, you can find it.
Okay.
Don't worry, that's just my 3-year-old yelling in the background. He's playing with his toys.
I have a 5-year-old yelling in our background.
Yep. That's just him playing with his toys and waiting for Dad to get off the phone. So
exactly.
You know exactly what that's like. So that's, that's the process. So if you kind of wrote all that down, that's the process you go to. And by doing that, okay, you start to build relationships with these coaches. All right. And you start to find out who's probably not going to be interested. Honestly, I always say that's as good as a no is as good as a yes, because you don't waste time. All right. And that's kind of one of the tough things for, a 16, 17-year-old to kind of handle, but you have to be mature in the process because it'll get you in the right position in the end. And that's your ultimate goal. Like, when I was going through the recruiting process, when I was your age and I was going through it, I wanted to go to Penn State. I wanted to go to UCLA. Okay. UCLA told me I had to go to JUCO, and my father gave me great advice. He said, well, what if you go to JUCO and you end up blowing out a knee? And I had like 7 other offers at FCS and a couple of 1As, what used to be called FCS. So UConn back then was FCS. And University of Maryland, who was terrible at the time. Obviously, they're much better now. They had offered me, but it wasn't any of the schools that I quote unquote had always dreamed about. And really, what happened is when I went to UConn, I mean, it was more than I ever imagined. And when I went on my visits, I was like, I love this place. So it's one of those things you got to go in with an open mind and open eyes, because it throws you for a lot of loops. And you want to stay positive and enjoy it as much as possible, because it comes around once. And sometimes people get stressed out. But if you follow the process, you won't get stressed out, because you'll start to build what is correct. You'll know who's interested in you, and you'll know who's not interested in you. And you'll start to go to these schools, and you'll realize when you shake hands with them, if they're spending a lot of time with you, they got a good interest in you. If they say hello to you and no one talks to you the rest of the day, and they're spending all kinds of time with another kid, you'll know that you're below him on a priority list. And, when I went to visit Syracuse, George DeLeon, who now is an NFL coach, he's kind of at the end of his career. He was the offensive coordinator at Syracuse. And George, used to call me all the time. We went up to Syracuse, and they were recruiting me as a fullback. And I was in there, and they said hello to me, and they spent some time with me, and I could see there was interest. But the whole time they spent with the other kid, same exact position as me. And I realized at that moment that that kid was going to get offered, and if he took it, I was not going to get offered. And Syracuse was a school I liked a lot, but I realized at that moment that I kind of, had to shift my mindset, because more than likely it wasn't going to happen. Okay. And that was an important thing. And being able to do that will help you, because when you get the schools that really like you and they start to push you to make a decision, you'll be able to make a clear decision. Okay. And I'm give you one other story. All right. I coached a kid. I don't know if you know this name, but Steve Boharnis, he played at Rutgers, was a captain.
Linebacker.
Yep. Okay.
Sure.
So Steve played my first 2 years as head coach at Saddlebrook. Steve was with me freshman and sophomore year, and then I ended up leaving. And we got Steve an offer right when he was a sophomore. Okay. And he started from time as freshman. He was a great football player. But he didn't have big time speed. I would say he was probably like mid 4.7s, but it was a fantastic football player, just a stud. So I had already moved on. I was at another school, and going into his summer of his senior year, I get a call from it wasn't Flood at first, one of the other assistants, but then Coach Flood got on the phone because he knew me real well, and he said, hey, have you talked to Steve Boharnis? And I said, no, I haven't talked to him in a while, but I do talk to his father quite regularly. And he said to me, he said, can you give him a call and find out what's going on with him? So I get on the phone, I talk to Steve, and Steve's like, well, we're waiting on Penn State. I said, what else do you have? He said, I just have Rutgers. I said, get your dad on the phone. I talked to his father, and I've known him for a long time. I said, Mr. Boharnis, I'm like, listen, he doesn't have anything else. You're going to have to figure out what you want to do. As soon as I get off the phone with him, I get a call 10 minutes later from Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano calls me up, and he goes, I heard Steve Boharnis only has the offer from us, he needs to drive down here now so I could talk to him so we could either figure out if we need to move on or if he needs to move on or if he has an interest. He's like, I know you have a great relationship with him. I'd appreciate it if you just call him and kind of articulate that from me. Okay. I got on the phone with Steve. I said, listen, I was just on the phone with Greg Schiano, and he wants you guys to drive down there now and get in and have a conversation with him. And I got Reggie on the phone, his father's name. And I said, listen, I'm like, you want to throw away the one offer because you're hoping Penn State gives you an offer. That's a mistake. I said, go down there, see what he has to say. Sat down with Greg Schiano on the ride home, called me back. He said, thank you so much. He's like, we're going to commit to Rutgers. He's like, we didn't realize the urgency in there. So because I had left, I was guiding him through the process, but I wasn't as involved anymore. And when those guys called me up, I knew the sense of urgency. And so there was a kid who ended up playing the NFL who literally could have ended up going FCS because he really didn't understand what was going on in the process anymore because I just hadn't talked to him in quite as regular as I had before. I wasn't involved. And so that's why you really want to assess everything that's going on and think about things from a clear head. And when you get to that point, if you do get offers and you get that point, you say, hey, okay, I have a couple offers here. They're going to press you to want you to commit. And then you have to figure out and talk to the schools that you're interested in who may not have offered you. And you can then press them and say, hey, where's this going? Because otherwise I'm going to commit. And the other thing you need to know is that even if you do commit, I tell this to kids now. I didn't tell this to kids 10 years ago, but I tell this to kids now. You commit to a school and somehow the school of your dreams comes in later on and you need to change your mind. You have to do what's in your best interest. And, because you're going to spend 4 or 5 years there. And, last thing you want to be is one of these kids that has to transfer 2 or 3 times because you made the wrong decision. I always think, it kind of hinders your college experience to have to do that a lot. So, you want to have a great football experience, whether it goes on to the next level or not. You want to get the best education you can and leverage everything to the best of your ability. And then go from there. Any questions?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Go back, start that process, and then just let me know how it's going over give it 30 days. And, because they're going to be in camp in August, so it might be a little light then. But once you get into September and you start, if you're DMing guys, you're starting to reach out to them an email, you're reaching out on phone, you'll start to make some progress and make connections, and you'll start to get things worked out. And by the time you get to October, you should be visiting places. And those are unofficial visits. So you could take I didn't touch on this. You could take as many unofficial visits as you want, meaning you're paying your way to go there. An official visit, what I'm saying? Do you know the difference between unofficial and official?
Yes.
Yeah.
You do? Okay, good. So, you could take as many of those as you want. And I think those are really important, valuable things to start doing. And if it was me, I would look up, I don't know if Rutgers has any more camps, but I would look up and see, does UConn have a camp, at the end of July that maybe I'll slide into? Does Fordham have a camp? Their FCS scholarship. Does Princeton have a camp? A lot of these FCS schools will have some stuff towards the end of July so they don't have to compete with the big schools.
Right. Okay.
So I would kind of go and just, as you're picking out that list, go and see if they have any other camps and go to a couple before you get into the season. Because once you get into August and you start football camp, you're not going anywhere, Yeah.
Limited.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere the whole month of August, I mean, now, I don't know if Coach gives you off on Sunday, but if he gives you off on Sunday, if you wanted to go up to a school in the afternoon and visit somewhere like some day trips, I would do that if you can get in there. Go watch them in camp. If they'll let you come down and watch them in camp, why not?
Sure.
Sometimes Sunday they have, colleges now, because the way the rules are, they probably give those guys off, so you might have a little bit of time to at least say hello, or and if they are practicing, even better, I mean, I know I get my guys off Sunday in camp now just because of the way it is, but, you know, I don't know if coach does that or not. But if you do get a day off, you know, drive, you know, take a day trip, drive to Villanova, drive to, you know, 2.5 hour window in, you know, somewhere that you can drive and be back, you know, by nighttime. I think it's worthwhile.
Okay. Good plan.
All right. Was that too much information, or did you get a lot?
No. It was very informative. We got everything written down. Huge help. Definitely a huge help.
Good. And then if you have any other questions, obviously, you know, shoot me those anytime, and I'm glad to ask them. And then, if we get in the spring and you want to kind of do, we can do a like full assessment, get a heavy duty call going. You know what I mean? And really go through everything and hit the spring. You know, I would recommend, like, if you're going through the fall, it's going to take you a while to go through this whole process. Maybe January, mid-January, we could say, okay, where are you? And then we could reformulate a revised game plan based on what's going on. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think the world of Brian. I think he's a competitor. I think he's an excellent athlete. I think he's got some great skill sets. To me, he's a scholarship guy. Obviously, I don't make that decision, but to me, he is. He's got the tools to do that. Obviously, speed's an important thing. I think you make the right move in running track. And, obviously, I coached you in 7-on-7, so I'm telling you, listen, if you have to sacrifice 7-on-7 to go run track, it's worth it, because getting your speed up is obviously going to be the most important thing. You got to figure out what's going to get you to where you need to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay. So, because football is your main love, right? You don't play anything else really other than that, right?
No, I always play football.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. That's all he has.
That's it. So there you go. So everything. So when you're running track, that speed is going to be. And I'll tell you, the thing you'll find is, most guys grab a tenth of a second by running track in that spring. I've seen it with my guys. I think we had 25 kids run track this spring from our football team, and they came back so much faster. Yeah. And if you're squeezing a tenth, when you're a top guy and you're competing with a lot of other really good players, if that 40 goes under 4.7 and you're in the 4.6 range at 200 pounds versus, let's say you ran a 4.75 next year, that's literally 4.65 to 4.75 could be the difference between you going FBS and FCS.
Right.
I mean, it really is. It sounds crazy, but that's the truth.
Yeah. Okay.
Brian, you got any questions, buddy?
Nope.
Sure you got it down?
Yeah, I wrote everything down.
Good. Go easy on us. Go easy on us when you play us, okay? Try not to score too much. Okay.
He'll definitely be back with the 7-on-7. He enjoyed himself with that with you guys last year.
Good. And if there's anything else you need, obviously I'm here. If there's anything I help you with, I'm glad to help you. There's a lot of schools that if you mention my name, like if you're going to a school and you'd be like, hey, is there anybody you have a relationship with here? I can tell you whether I do or I don't. There's some schools I know, almost everybody knows about me from NUC Sports, but there are guys that I actually have like relationships with versus, they just might know of me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So in those cases, it could certainly help.
Great. Excellent.
All right. And you guys have a great weekend. Okay?
Yeah, you too. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. I enjoy working with you guys.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll talk soon. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anytime. Have a great day.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.